Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Göran Larsson to Nebraska, virtually welcoming you to Nebraska today for Global Islam Current Debates Conversation. I'm Abla Hasan, Associate Professor of Practice of Arabic Language and Culture here at Nebraska University. And today we're meeting with Dr. Göran Larsson to discuss his very important paper, a paper we're reading for class, The Sound of Satan, Different Aspects of Whispering in Islamic Theology. The paper was published in 2012. Let me start by introducing our guest for today. Dr. Göran Larsson is a professor in religious studies and deputy dean for the Faculty of Arts at the University of Gothenburg, Sweden. His research is focused on Islam and Muslims in Europe, Islamic theology, Quranic studies, and issues related to religion and the media. Currently, he is conducting research into Muslims in Europe, especially in Sweden. He is contracted to write a volume for Braille together with Dr. Musa Saeed. He's working on an externally funded research project on apostasy and Islam. This project is funded by the Swedish Research Foundation. He's also working on a second research project on how the current conflicts in the Middle East have an impact on Swedish schools. In addition, he is part of a large research project on the display of Islam in European museums. As we say in Arabic, Dr. Larsson, mashallah, you're busy with so many important projects. And in addition to that impressive number of projects, Dr. Larsson wrote an impressive number of papers. Today we're reading The Sound of Satan, Different Aspects of Whispering in Islamic Theology, as I mentioned, published 2012. An article that focuses on the sound of whispering and the private conversation in Islamic theology. In this class, in our journey to ask as many questions about Islam as possible, we're trying to unlock the mysterious character of Satan in Islamic theology. As you explain in your paper, whispering in Islamic context is associated with Satan. The paper is very important for so many reasons, out of what you introduce in the introduction, and I'm quoting you, Dr. Larsson, compared to the study of Islam and music, if I may use a broad category, including many different topics and academic interests, it's much more difficult to find the studies of sound and Islam, which to the best of my knowledge is a neglected field of studies. Also, the paper is important because it adds to the little we know about Satan. On page 53, you write, it's clear that whispering is associated above all with Satan, who by his whispering has the power to seduce men and women, leading them down the broad path that will take them to hell and damnation. To you, Dr. Larsson, to learn more about the question on whispering, وسوسة as the verb in the Quran, and to learn more about that in the prophetic tradition and the Islamic literature.
Thank you very much for this kind introduction, and you also remind me that I need to update my web page, which is painfully clear. At the moment, I'm also working on other topics. The book that you mentioned with Musa Saeed is published, and at the moment, besides doing a lot of admin work as a deputy dean, I also have a research project on the nexus between the conflicts in Syria and Iraq and the fact that a rather high number of individuals left Sweden to join the Islamic State and similar movements in order to see how municipalities and governmental official bodies understood this question. So that is an interview study that I'm conducting at the
So
moment.
the book is already published?
The one by Musa Sayed and me is published, yes.
Oh, congratulations. Congratulations on this.
Thank you very much. And from the kind presentation by Abla Hasan, you also understand that for good and bad, I move in many different directions. I started out when I wrote my thesis, it dealt with the tension between Arab and non-Arab Muslims in Al-Andalus, in Muslim Spain in the 11th century. And then I have moved on to the tension between Arab wal Ajam, and then I moved on to more contemporary issues and dealt with many different things. But I tried to go back to Islamic theological discussions. And I wouldn't dare to call myself an Arabist. I have studied Arabic, but my Arabic is basically for checking translations and references and etc. But I'm very intrigued with how different Muslim groups understand and interpret and make use of Islamic theology. As a scholar of religious studies, I believe that the aim of studying religion is to not define what is a proper way of understanding a religion or something, because that's a question for theologians or the ulama in the case of Islam. But my interest is more on how individuals, for example, who self-identify as Muslims, understand Islamic theology. So turning to this paper, I if you want me to make a kind of summary of the paper or some of the points, I can also share the screen with you. Now you will see my messy screen, but sorry for that. Are you able to see my screen? Yes, good. So this is just a brief recap of the text that I've written. If you have any questions or comments or critique, don't be shy, because academic work is about posing questions. And if you have problems with some of my interpretations, please fight back and question my interpretations, because that's what academia is about. So as Abla said, this paper was published in a Nordic journal called Temenos, the Nordic Journal of Comparative Religion. And so what I'm interested in this paper was, thank you also for giving me the opportunity to reread my paper, because it's been written some time ago, and to coming back to it. And it's always interesting to read things that you have published before or a long time ago, see if they are waterproof, so to speak, or if there is any flaws in them. I'm sure that there are a lot of flaws in this one, but we can discuss that. So what I try to address here is also the question of sound and the boundary between sound and noise. And in musical ethnography or anthropology, one is often using the term soundscapes, because sound is not only something that is related to music. As persons and individual, as human beings, we have perceptions of our surrounding, and sound and sound, smell, and different feelings are part of being human. So we hear noises the whole time, and we sort them in different ways. So that's why also sound is important. And I put some references here on Charles Erskine and also Nelson's study on the recitation of the Quran, and Erskine's studies of Muslim soundscapes in Cairo and tape recordings, etc. So in the paper, I try to make a distinction between, on the one hand, silence as being silent. And for example, in Christian tradition, if you go into a monastery, silence is a virtue. And it's often used as a virtue. It's better to be silent than just blabbering away and talking too much. So silence is often looked upon as something positive. And the other extreme is saying something out loud. If you want to state your opinion, you should say it out loud. And then we have this interesting in-between position, which is whispering. And in this paper, I try to address the question of whispering, because whispering can be related, as Abla said, to the figure of Satan in Islamic tradition, but also in other traditions. In a comparative point of view, whispering is a very interesting position to look into. So there could be a future project would be, for example, to compare in different religious tradition these concepts. But in the Quran or in other religious tradition, sound is often used for warnings, natural phenomena like the wind or the thunder or the storm is a kind of sign of the connection with the divine world, so to speak. And here you have it in the Hindu, Indian, Iranian tradition, the wind god Vayu, for example. And in the Old Norse mythology, you have the god of Thor. Thor is the one, if maybe you have seen the Marvel films on Thor and Ragnarok. And there you have when thunder and lightning is associated with the god of Thor, the god of war in Norse mythology. But you also have, in this paper, I try to, in connection to silence and saying something out loud, you have the in-between position of whispering. And for unpacking that in-between position, I used Mary Douglas. And when something is good or bad, accepted or forbidden, it's a matter of definition, and who has the power. That is very important, because the power of who has the power to interpret and say this is a proper interpretation of a religious tradition, and the authority to stipulate the truth, in a sense. And it's the same in the court system. If you take a case to the court, the judge, when he or she use the